from a team that's future is looking a bit dire, depending on who you ask, to a team that has taken a stronghold over their division over the past couple of years, and things are really looking up at this point. I don't know if anybody's calling the Texans even a top 10 team at this point. Unfortunately, it seems like they've kind of slipped out of that
I've been
tier.
seeing a lot of questionable power rankings from
Yeah,
a number of NFL media members that, quite frankly, is a little bit of an overreaction. But yeah,
disrespectful.
let's talk about the
Let's get into some
Texans draft.
Texans. Yeah.
Maybe I guess the Bears breakdown was upbeat. You guys can go check that out. I'm guessing we're going to break out all these videos.
Oh yeah.
But we'll move to a better football team than the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans. Look, let's start with, I guess, day 1/day 2 for the Texans. Obviously, as everybody watched the draft saw, they traded out of 25 and moved back to the second pick in the second round, where they selected Jaden Higgins, who is a guy that I think was getting buzzed to be picked in the latter half of the first round in a lot of mocks and amongst a lot of NFL media members. So, look, I'll start with Jaden Higgins. I love his game. People compare him to Nico Collins. I can definitely see the similarities. If you watch the tape, you can kind of see a guy he's got some wiggle at 6'4". He's got good size. He's bigger. I'd say he's like 210, 6'4", 210. The way he runs his routes that size, I think, is probably the most impressive thing about him. He runs these deep posts and crossers that you see Nico Collins run a ton for the Texans, and at very, very successful rates. He's got good bend. He's got underrated route running ability. I think a lot of the things that people kind of wanted, I think it was Steve Smith who mentioned this too, who you wanted to see out of Tet McMillan, you kind of saw out of Jaden Higgins from a route running perspective. So look, I'm totally cool with the Jaden Higgins pick. If they picked him at 25, I would have honestly been cool with that too. So getting him at 34 and picking up an extra third in this draft, and then next year, which, I mean, God, I don't even know if we still have that draft pick considering how much Casario trades in draft day. But in any case, I think we've got 7 or 8 picks next year. We still have Washington's second from the Tunzel trade, and I think we still have an extra third next year from the Giants for making that deal. So, yeah, Jaden Higgins. I get the Jaden Higgins pick a B plus. I don't know what you guys think. We can start with Higgins. What you've seen
I
on
think
tape from him.
you got to take the Higgins pick in context with the Noel pick as well. I mean, I think
Yeah,
the fact that they were able to get both of those guys double dip at wide receiver, it's following the same principle that I talked about with the Bears earlier, going Loveland and going Burden, in the sense that it gives you so much versatility as to what you can do. You mentioned how Higgins feels a little bit like a Nico Collins clone, and what that affords you the ability to do is you can move Nico Collins anywhere. You can move him in the slot. You could have him play the Z. You know that Jaden Higgins has that X locked down, and I love
yeah,
the pick for that reason. And then Noel as well. You've got Christian Kirk already on the roster. You've got multiple receivers now. It feels like I'm just copy and pasting my argument from the Bears, but I think it really applies when you can get as much receiver talent as possible. You give yourself so much more financial flexibility moving forward to not be desperate, to not be in a situation where you're having to franchise tag somebody or
well, Pat,
desperately pay a huge
Well,
contract.
well,
yeah,
well,
hang on, Mike. Hang on, Mike. Here, hang on. I was going to say to Pat's point here. This is my team, Mike. You'll get your turn. To Pat's point,
yeah.
watch watch the Chiefs game in the playoffs last year when there was no Tank Dell. Obviously, there was no Stephon Diggs, and I know Roll Tide John Mechie. But when
Okay.
your second and third receivers were John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson, that offense just lacked some sort of burst in those regards, especially when it came to having a guy on the outside that's physically imposing. Xavier Hutchinson, former 6th-round pick, another Iowa State guy, but just not that type of receiver. Or you take a Tank Dell type and you slide Mechie in there. Mechie at this point doesn't have the same type of burst, doesn't have the same type of explosiveness that Tank Dell had at one point. I mean, you could say the same thing about Diggs as well. So they were really, I think, missing that. That when the wheels kind of fell off there, the depth at receiver didn't step up despite despite plenty of opportunities throughout the course of the season. And I think Nick Caserio saw those two guys on the board and was just like, never again. That's never happening again. And keep in mind, Nico Collins and Christian Kirk the last couple of years, much as I love Nico Collins, he's good to miss 3 or 4 games a year at some point. Christian Kirk hasn't been the most. I mean, he's had some freak injuries like a broken collarbone, and then he had a weird groin injury.
Just a smaller, slighter guy too, so it's just harder.
Yeah, it's just those guys might not be there in any given week. You can't really expect those guys to go in and play 17 games. So you don't want to have what happened last year, where all of a sudden you came into the year with a bunch of weapons, and then you look up in December and John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson are playing 90% of the snaps in a playoff game. So I from that perspective, I really do like it. And look, Jaden Higgins, I think, is an immediate day one starter at the Y receiver. I think Noel will contribute on special teams and be a Christian Kirk backup. Christian Kirk is going to be the slot receiver. He takes 90% of his snaps from the slot. He'll be the slot guy. I think Noel is a great backup for Christian Kirk, given the chance that he might miss a couple games at any given point. And he can help you on special teams in the return game. I think he was an all Big 12 special teams player at Iowa State, Jalen Noel. So I love those two guys. Sorry, Mike, you can go ahead now.
No, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, I think it was a fantastic pick, and I really think, with the dealing with the Tank Dell injury and how he's going to be when he comes back, knowing that Christian Kirk is the next guy up. I mean, I really think there's a realistic avenue that Jaden Higgins is going to insert himself as a number 2 in that offense.
Yeah,
and,
I think he will be. Yeah,
I think he will be too. And I think at first glance, you didn't pay Christian Kirk the Jags money that he got when he went there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think that's a plug and play day one. Let's go out there and show what you got. You got CJ Stroud. I mean, obviously we'll get to the protection that he's going to have, from what you guys picked up in the draft and through free agency. But I think Jaden Higgins is actually going to be a really good. 6'4", putting him out there with Diggs. That's
Collins.
You mean Collins?
With Collins.
Yeah. Sorry.
I agree, Mike. Yeah.
With Nico Collins, 2 guys that are going to be able to go up, stretch the field, and grab the ball. I think it's a fantastic.
It allows you to exploit. Go ahead, Turtle.
I was gonna say 2 6'4" guys that run 4.4s, and that
matchup nightmare.
Runners.
Yeah,
matchup nightmare for any team. If you find a matchup that you really want to exploit with Nico Collins, you've given yourself the flexibility to configure your offense, whether it's playing Noel, whether it's playing Higgins, Kirk, however you want to configure them around. You can put Collins in that weak link of the defense, and you can feast on it. So I really like not having to tie Nico Collins strictly to being an X. I think it opens up their offense and what Nick Haley's going to be able to do on day one. So I agree, Mike. I think I like them together.
Yeah, or strictly being the guy that gets keyed in on. We saw it in the playoff game against Kansas City. Like Nico Collins was getting harassed by basically the Kansas City took his half of the field away, and they're like, we're going to let Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie beat us. And sure enough, that strategy worked because CJ had to hold on to the ball. Offensive line obviously can't block, which we'll get to the offensive line. But yeah, I think that they solved the receiver issue. And getting both those Iowa State guys, they're the only duo in all of college football to have 2 receivers go over 1,000 yards. I mean, they're both really good players. And to Mike's point too, you mentioned Christian Kirk's contract. I think the drafting of these 2 guys means this is probably similar to the Diggs scenario where, look, Christian Kirk is on a 1-year deal. It's the remainder of his deal he signed with Jacksonville. They restructured it to where they paid him the signing bonus. It's just this year. He's probably, depending on what happens with Jalen Noel, what he shows, this is probably just a 1-year rental for Christian Kirk. And like we talked about with the Bears, that's totally fine. Like we're not forced to re-sign Christian Kirk if he has a good year because we've got the depth pieces in place. So that's from that regard. I guess we touched on Jaden Higgins and Noel there, so we can move on to.
But what's just as important what's just as important as getting TJ Stroud as many receivers as you can and weapons as you can
is
it's fixing that offensive
protection. Yeah,
let's get some guys that can roll
protection, exactly.
Well,
and getting him my most underrated offensive tackle in this draft.
I'd like to ask Texans influencer Turtle here. No, I mean you got a Big Ten top 10.
He was the Big Ten offensive lineman of the year last year.
Of the year, dude. Like, I mean, 38 games in his final year or final 2-3 years of college that he was doing. I mean, he's got experience. He's got. I mean, you needed it because you made the Tunsil trade. You liked the Tunsil trade. You say you.
Oh, I love the Tunsil trade.
Do you think you addressed the loss there?
Well, so I'll talk about Essery real quick. Essery from a prospect perspective, and I'll say this because, look, the Texans apparently after they traded with the Giants, again, a good deal came to them. They took it. The Texans were apparently trying to move back into the first to get Josh Connerly. Didn't happen. They also were trying to move up in the draft. Nick Caserio said that as much over the last couple of days in his media rounds. Obviously didn't happen either. He's a disciplined GM. He's not going to overpay or overtrade or do anything of that stuff. So for that, I'm fine with. As far as Essery as a prospect is concerned, he is an absolute behemoth of a human. 6'6", 330, I believe is his weight, like 335. And he's got some nice athleticism for a guy that size. Look, watch his tape against Abdul Carter. If you want to see how good he is, that he put on a clinic against the best pass rusher in this draft. Look, he's got a lot of upside. I do think he needs to clean up some stuff technique wise. If he's going to be a really good offensive tackle in the draft. And the one thing that kind of concerns me is if you look at offensive tackles drafted in this range, I mean, we maybe can bring up Braxton Jones as an example or some other guys. I'm sure there's examples. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I just saw the number. Offensive tackles that are drafted in the late first to early second round window, I think it's like 10% of them go on to make a Pro Bowl. So it's not a high number. It's like a 30% chance they're a starter for 4 years, and then the rest.
There's usually a reason they're not picked at the top of the draft, right? I mean, there's usually some kind of debilitating factor
there. There's some, but you're not picking at the top of the draft. So as a Texans fan, I want to ask them to mortgage the farm to go up to 9 or in the top 5 again and pick up Will Campbell, Membo, or Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks was rumored that the Texans liked him a lot. It's hard to move up from 25 to 9. It just is. I mean, that's not a trade you can really draw up for the most part. So look, I think they did the best with where they were picking in the draft. Could they have gotten a little bit more aggressive at times? Sure, but I like Essery as a prospect, and I think there's a chance he can be a really, really good pro. I've seen people mention that they are really high on him, Pat, yourself included. And if he's a really good pro, then that's a great pick. I mean, it's kind of similar to the Blake Fisher pick last year. Mixed results of Blake Fisher. He'll be probably one of your starting tackles this year. But Blake Fisher was another guy who, they were saying if he went back to school, he would have been a first-round pick in this year's draft. So I think they've got some talent there. I think it was a lot of addition by subtraction with Tunsil, just from a leadership perspective in the room. Look, Tunsil didn't practice a lot. He doesn't play with effort in the run game. he was supposed to be the leader of this offensive line, and this offensive line the offensive line had no dog to him. They had no dog to him. They got absolutely bullied in the pass game. When they didn't get bullied, they played stupid. They couldn't pick up any blitzes, and they were bottom of the league in yards gained and like yards provided in the run game. They did not give a lot of push. A lot of the good rushing games statistically from Mixon were because of Mixon being good, not necessarily the Texans' offensive line blocking well. So look, you get I think a very good haul, probably a haul in my eyes that was worth more than I saw Tunsil as worth on this team, especially given contract. You're going to have to pay CJ soon. You're going to have to pay Will Anderson soon. So you're going to have to pay. You already paid Stingley. There's some young guys that are going to get paid on this team.
Got Collins for cheap, locked down.
Yeah.
Collins is locked down for cheap
on a great deal. Yeah,
on a great deal. I think he's at this point probably the 13th or 14th highest paid receiver, and he's I think a top 5 player at his position. So yeah, the offensive line. Look, man, I'm the only criticism I've seen, and I can understand this from Texans fans. I personally am not that concerned about it. I know they were in on some guards to draft, but Donovan Jackson being one of them got picked a pick before to Minnesota. The only criticism I can think of really in at least the early part of the draft was they didn't really address guard or interior offensive line. But look, man, you're going to probably have Titus Howard play guard. So there's your left guard. Jarrett Patterson is maybe he's an average starter at center. And, you can try Drew Scruggs at right guard. They're also, Nick Cassera talked about him earlier. They had a rookie last year. Ladarius, I can't remember his last name. I literally just saw the clip. Hang on, I'll tell you. Apologies, viewers.
Henderson.
Ladarius Henderson. Yeah, Nick Cassera was raving about this guy. Was out last year injured. Maybe he can give you something. He said that Nick Cassera said himself he would have been competitive in getting on the field last year if he was healthy. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a pipe dream.
You got Lakin Tomlinson. You signed him as well. That's a
I mean, we got Cam Robinson. We've got Cam Robinson.
Cam
Robinson played,
which is another
year.
reason why I like the Ursary. I like the Ursary pick because he doesn't have to start day one. You can allow him a little bit of time to develop with Cam Robinson.
And at least some of these guys on the offensive line, I think, will have a little bit more dog to them. Think back to early in CJ Stroud's career when it was like that first game against Jacksonville, his rookie season, where he was like on the map. Tank Dell had 2 touchdowns. Look at the starting offensive line that day. The right tackle was George Fant. The left tackle was Titus Howard. And the interior offensive line was a mosh pit of, I'm pretty sure we were on our 4th center on that game. And CJ, one of the best games of his career. So all I'm saying is, like, people get worked up about, you traded one of the best left tackles in the league. Look, under the surface, man, this guy was, in my opinion, not one of the best left tackles in the league, because the best left tackles in the league play like Trent Williams. They bully people. Laramie Tunsil ain't out there bullying people. He's just not. He looks cool in pass pro. He rolls a nice meatball. Sure. His PFF grade's great. He wears red gloves. Look how cool he is. Nah, man. Give me some dogs on this team. This offensive line, they could be an average. They could just be average pass blocking, but they don't let Stroud get absolutely killed on the sideline. They go up to the other team and get in guys' faces and stuff. Play like Dylan Brooks, or honestly, give me Draymond. Put 50 pounds, maybe more than that. Put 100 pounds on. Put 100 pounds on Draymond. That's what I'm saying. I want a Draymond.
I want some saltiness. I want an edge
man.
to my O line for sure.
Yeah, they didn't. They had no edge last year. That's what held and the offense played like that. Your leader on the offense was Laramie Tunsil, and the offense always looked like zero sense of urgency. Like, no, they let teams just walk all over them. And yeah, individual talent got them far, with Stroud being as good as he is and Nico Collins being as good as he is, and Joe Mixon being as good as he is. But
right,
individual talent, by the time you start playing in December and January, it's not going to win you games in December and January.
Well, Turtle, one of the picks that I really wanted to get your take on, I think it was, I mean, just off of depth and in terms of, I mean, I think you guys have a great cornerback core that you have, but taking Jalen Smith out of USC, I mean, just add another dog to, I think, what is one of the best position groups in the league. I mean, talking Derek Stingley, talking Lassiter, talking Jalen Petrie. I mean, Jalen Petrie might be up there for like you may have to be like looking over your shoulder for a young dog.
He's another guy that just got paid as well. Right? Yeah, he just got paid as well. He's the top nickel in the league, top paid nickel in the league.
Not anymore. Kyler Gordon got signed like a couple days after.
Did he really?
Kyler Gordon.
I missed that. Yeah. All right. Well, second highest paid.
But I like Jalen Smith. I like Jalen Smith a lot.
No, I look, that was a pick that I think many considered a reach. But look, I trust the Texans in picking defensive backs at this point. They've done an incredible job with picking defensive backs in Nick Casario's tenure. Jalen Smith was projected to be like, I think, a 5th or 6th round pick. They picked him in the 3rd. A reach by a lot of draft board standards, sure, but look, I trust this front office and coaching staff to pick DBs. They must have saw something they really liked in him. I heard a quote that they like how he could possibly play some special teams as well. And look, it's good depth. I think we needed some depth behind Lassiter and Stingley. We kind of saw that last year when some guys were getting banged up. We had to play. There's MJ Stewart was out there a little bit.
Well, Stingley's had injury concerns.
Yeah, he played all the games last year, but yeah, early on in his career, he battled a lot of injuries. So yeah, I mean, take a flyer in the 3rd round on Jalen Smith. I don't mind it. Woody Marks is another guy that a lot of people said they reached on, running back out of USC as well. Apparently, it was funny. Pat here texted me in the middle of the draft. He goes, the Texans can pick from players that don't have maroon and gold colors. They kind of kept that train rolling for the rest of the draft. But Woody Marks, look, as a number 2 running back, I think he might come in and be that number 2 back right away just from his pass catching ability. Again, this seems like a regular Texans pick where, Woody Marks, you're in a 4.5 40, like nothing really physically jumped off the page. But they must have saw something they really liked, and I think that was his receiving ability out of the backfield. Dameon Pierce, not really a scheme fit at this point. He's kind of relegated to that special teams role. Joe Mixon, obviously RB1, but I think Woody Marks kind of gives you a different feel from a pass catching standpoint than Mixon, and definitely Dameon Pierce, which I hope Dameon Pierce gets traded and goes somewhere that fits his skill set, because I love DP. And he had a great rookie season. I just think he can go to the Bears. I mean, I don't know if he's a fit for Ben Johnson's kind of zone scheme either, right? But
do you think you guys would be in the market for? There's names like Kenneth Walker getting pushed around. Like, I mean, do you think
not with Mixon on the roster? I mean, it was funny because Breece Hall tweeted like the Houston Cyclones. And I was like, because Breece Hall's another Iowa State guy. And I'm like, it would be kind of fun to just throw Breece Hall into this kettle. But I just don't think that's a trade the Texans make. Unless they want to give up Breece Hall for like a 4th or something. But if you ask me,
Woody Marks in the 4th round kind of shows you where they're at with their
run with Mixon, and I like Woody Marks from his skill of pass catching. I think it's kind of like even you guys mentioned it with the Browns, and kind of like a 1-2 punch of Sampson and Judkins. It's kind of similar to this. I mean, Mixon is obviously, he can catch out of the backfield too, but he's a bruiser. Woody Marks isn't a bruiser. But you do kind of get a little bit of yin and yang with those two together. So I like that. I don't know why they picked Graham Mertz. Don't ask me. I I don't know that. I mean, Davis Mills is going into the last year of his deal.
Emergency quarterback. You need an emergency
Well,
quarterback.
yeah. I mean, we didn't. Case Keenum signed with the Bears. Actually,
Yeah.
good
Yes, he
signing,
did.
good mentor
Yes, he did.
there. I was hoping Case Keenum would retire and then we would hire him on as the QB coach if Gerard Johnson had left. But maybe that's still in the cards at some point. But
Schwab's
that's
still out there.
That's a great. Is he still an active NFL player? No, he retired. He retired.
There's no chance.
I know when he was when Matt
I'm
Ryan
saying
was
as a
on
QB coach.
when Matt Ryan was on the Falcons, Schaub was backing him up, and Schaub was like 41. I'm like, how is he still in the NFL? But no, yeah, Graham Mertz. Yeah, I guess we needed a third quarterback, so they traded up for him, which is, I mean, I think Caserio has an addiction to trades. I really do. He never picks. He never picks where they're like originally slotted ever.
First
I
quarterback.
like the conviction of that. You know,
First
if you really
quarterback.
do
Well,
think-
he's got a plan. Like
CJ in 2023.
What's up, Mike?
First quarterback you've taken since CJ in 2023.
Yeah, that lines up.
Ryan Pace, the Bears' old GM, used to say, and he never actually did it. But he said it very regularly. He was like, "You got to take a quarterback in every single draft."
Yeah,
at least one
they floated that one around on the draft coverage a lot, actually, especially when Shadur was falling. But no, I mean, my main criticism of the Texans draft is, I guess it's not really a criticism because the board just didn't really shake out like that. But I would have liked to have seen them grab probably a higher caliber defensive tackle.
Yeah.
I was praying for Kenneth Grant to fall to us at 25. That obviously was a pipe dream and didn't happen. But I mean, guys like Shamar Turner or some of these like that big guy from Texas, Alfred Collins. Yeah. I mean, one of those guys in the middle rounds, I think I would have liked to have had, because we're kind of back to the same guys as last year, Tim Settle, and we brought Sheldon Rankins back from Cincinnati. But the Foley, Fudakasis, these guys weren't bad last year. These guys were good players, but none of them were. They're meat and potatoes guys. So I would have liked
it needed to be a priority to get CJ another weapon.
No, for sure.
With a question mark with Tank Dell.
I'm just saying, like, you had some extra picks mixed in there, and I know Nick Caserio is like, he got mad at the media for asking about drafting for need when he's like, we never draft for need around here, but your first three picks were wide receiver, offensive lineman, wide receiver. Those are pretty big needs. But in any case, I mean, later in the draft, they really didn't draft for need. They got Keontae Hamilton late in the draft. But at that point, all those late round picks are kind of, I mean, we talk about it with the Bears and the Browns too. They're all kind of dartboard throws at the back end of the draft. I'm not expecting Keontae Thornton. If he does come in and gets tick and is a good player, then I'll be pleasantly surprised. But that's kind of the only thing.
You got draft capital to work with. That's the key. Draft capital.
Oh, I can guarantee you that next year's draft, with we'll have an extra third from the Giants. We'll keep an extra fourth
Commanders pick,
from
right?
Washington. We have the Commanders second, so we've got and an extra fourth from the Commanders next year too.
So I think you got to at least look at using one of those when you talk about maybe you didn't get the defensive tackle that you wanted. Depending on who's available on the trade market.
I'm not saying it's like you need to go get a defensive tackle for this upcoming season or else like everything's like for naught. Like, I'm fine with the guys they have. I just would have liked to, like, if Kenneth Grant fell to 25, I would have been running up to the podium and picking Kenneth Grant at 25. Like, you get a difference maker at that spot. They don't have a difference maker at that spot right now. They've just got some meat and potatoes guys, which is fine. I think this defense has the potential to be the best defense in the league next year. I don't see a lot of weaknesses on this defense, to be quite honest with you. Maybe the one concern is linebacker depth, but you signed EJ Speed in the offseason. You got Christian Harris clean back from injury. Yep. You still have Azeez Al-Shire and Henry To'oTo'o. This secondary, The secondary is the best secondary in the league. I will. You can bulletin board that. It's the best secondary.
Bears might have something to say about that.
I think
We'll just see.
they're better at safety than the Bears are.
They
You
are.
mentioned it yourself.
Yeah,
you sat there talking about moving guys around the safety, and you're going to sit here and tell me
Ruben
that the
Hippolyte at
Bears,
safety.
the secondary includes the safeties, Pat.
Turtle. Do you think any guys like I'm just off the top of my head, like Milton Williams, Jonathan Allen, Javon
Both just got
Kinlaw.
signed.
Both signed, yeah.
I think all three of those guys just got signed or kind of got long-term contracts.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I mean, it's tough to get a high value.
I don't think I would want them. I don't think I would want them to pay a defensive tackle either. That's the thing. Like, I don't want them to pay for a defensive tackle when you're going to pay Will Anderson and you're paying Daniil Hunter a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's why I would have liked to have drafted a guy. I also would have liked to have drafted a tight end, which I know we got Luke Leachy from Iowa in the 7th round, and we apparently were in on Colston Loveland. Apparently, that would have been a long ways to move up. But we were.
What do you mean? You love Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz. You can pin this one too. He is my first bully board candidate. I'm gonna bully Dalton Schultz all season long. If he wants to, he's just up there with Tunsil when it comes to playing like an absolute dope loser on the football field and getting just ran through and bullied, or just playing like a straight coward, like a coward. I'm so sick of Dalton Schultz.
Schultz, so I believe in you as being a member of the Swarm.
But
Dalton. I really do.
No, he's not swarmy in my eyes. Sure, you get Pat Stadium. You get someone who's not a Texans fan.
I mean, what about Sheldon Rankins?
I like how we're getting Brevin Jordan back from ACL tear. He showed some really good flashes in Stroud's rookie year.
But you picked up Sheldon Rankins. Like, I mean,
Well, I mean, Sheldon Rankins was in the Texans 2 years ago too, and he was a good player. He's solid. He's meat potatoes. Him, right. Tim Settle, Foy Fudikasi, they're not.
You wanted a penetrator.
Yeah,
I wanted a bit of a difference maker. That's why, like the Kenneth Grant is my example, like where I'm like, this guy could be a game changer.
Yeah,
I don't think any of those guys are game changers. Sheldon Rankins played really well for the Texans 2 years ago. Solid player. Tim Settle last year. Solid player. Foy Fudikasi. They all gave good snaps. Nothing like that jumps off the page or significantly alters games or anything. I would like to swing at somebody. That's all. I would like to swing a tight end too, but it is what it is.
What grade would you give the Texans draft to sum it all up? And how far do you expect the Texans to go this season?
So for their draft, I'll give a B plus. I think it was a solid draft. I don't
pretty good for not having a first round pick, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, they traded out of it themselves. That's all factored into the equation. Depending on what they got. I think they picked up the equivalent of an extra 3rd round pick in value. Apparently the Giants overpaid by an extra 3rd round pick to move into that spot. So overall, I think it was a very good draft. I love Jaden Higgins. I love Jalen Noel. I like Ursery's talents a lot. So those first three picks, if you combine all those, honestly, I give it an A. Like you could have picked Higgins at 25, and I still would have loved it. The fact that they got him at 34 plus picked up extra assets coming back on the back end makes me like it more. The only reason it doesn't get an A is, your only offensive lineman was Ursery, who I like. But look, it could have gone differently. If we're sitting here and they'd say they picked Donovan Jackson at 25 and they don't get Higgins and the only receiver they pick's Noel, I would come back probably with the same concern. So I think they did a really good job with what they worked with. And to answer your second question, look, man, I still think even after last year, it's conference championship or bust. This is a team that's never reached the conference title game in its existence ever. Wow. So I think they need to reach the conference title game for me to consider it a successful season. currently constructed, I think they win the division. I don't see them winning like 13 games, but I think they'll end up in the 10 to 12 range again. And then I think they've got the pieces to win a playoff game, win 2 playoff games even. So that's kind of my projection. But if you want my expectation, I would say it's probably the same result as last year. And I'm only saying that to be pleasantly surprised if they make it to the AFC Championship game.
Divisional round exit on the road is
Yeah.
probably your thought as to
That's my honest
I'll
assessment.
see you in Cleveland for the championship game.
I don't know. What would you
figure
guys
out the
give it?
quarterback?
I mean, we gave the Bears a little bit of outside perspective. What do you guys
Sure.
think about the draft?
I think you guys did fantastic. I think you addressed. I think Jaden Higgins is your best draft pick that you made after getting rid of Diggs. I mean,
I love the double dip of Higgins and Noel.
Yeah.
At receiver and what that opens up for Nico Collins. Love you're going to get no argument from me on the Ursary pick. I thought that he was criminally underrated. I think you're putting him into a situation where he doesn't have to start day one, but he can be your long-term answer at left tackle. So I like the value there.
And I think
the same thing is the Trapilo pick.
I think the depth
is a third tackle.
I think the
third
depth,
tackle.
I think the depth you got in the secondary with Jalen Smith. I mean, all the guys you did pick there. I mean, you talk about addressing a need. Like,
well, Jalen Smith's going to be your backup nickel, and I think that's a position that everybody needs. Like you said, Mike, you want depth along that in the secondary. Secondary is obviously a strength.
Ursary
we also picked a safety.
Ursary was the most important pick you guys made.
What's that, Turtle?
We picked the safety, Jalen Reed.
Yeah, Jalen.
Just put him at safety.
For those that didn't see the draft video, he was on the phone with Nick Casario and he kept going, "Let's get it, let's get it." And Nick Casario was trying to talk to him. He's like, He just kept saying, "Let's get it."
I think
if you guys want to laugh, go watch that video.
He's a swarm.
He's a swarm guy.
I think Ursary was the most important pick you guys made.
Yep.
Yeah,
I like that.
Look, I've got no qualms with how. I think it's hard to go away from a draft. I guess other than picking Graham Mertz, but whatever.
I was going to say, I think Graham Mertz is your most important pick.
Yeah. Well, if Graham Mertz is getting playing time this season, take me out to pasture and kill me. Because
I'm ready for the Graham Mertz. The Graham Mertz Davis Mills comp.
The Mertz mania.
The Turts Mertz mania.
The Turts Mertz mania. I gotta get Graham Mertz. When I go out to Houston in the summer for training camp, I gotta get a shirt that's like one of those turtles from Mario, and just have it say like Mertz mania on it, and get Graham Mertz to wear it. Actually them picking Graham Mertz itself just for the Mertz Turts turtle combination is worth it. So
makes it worth it.
Area. Yeah,
and you got an Iowa tight end.
Rankins.
You got an Iowa tight end and Luke Lachey. So I like that too.
The problem is it's an Iowa tight end, but normally Iowa tight ends go higher than 7. So there's a reason that he was picked in the 7. But granted, the quarterback scenario over there wasn't exactly the best. So maybe we'll see. We'll see with Luke Lachey.
Overall, I mean, it's tough when you're one of these top tier teams. The draft gets a little more complicated when you don't have.
It's hard to get as excited. It's hard to get as excited. That's why I'm happy that I live in the city of Chicago and I don't have to live in Houston and then get all excited to go to the draft party and for 2 straight years go to the draft party and not have a first round pick. So imagine
next
waiting
year's draft
hours.
party to be a little more fun with all those Commanders picks and all the picks you got. Trading back
see.
this year.
Hopefully we're picking 32 and we'll trade out of that pick. Probably
knowing Casario, that's the way it'll go.
Or we'll trade up. I mean, you just don't know with Casario, man. He's a wheeler and dealer when it comes to the draft and draft picks. I mean, one last thought. 2 hours before the draft, I get an alert about a trade. the Texans have swapped picks with the Browns. Like, oh, this is going to be interesting. It was like this year's 5th for like 2-6 and like a next year's 5th going back to the point. What the hell
That
is
was
this?
weird. That was so weird.
Well, the thing is the Texans didn't have any. They didn't have any 6th-round picks going into this draft. So Caserio traded 1 pick next year, and like a 5th this year to like acquire 6th and 7th this year.
Just because he has OCD about having
well, then
picks
he
every
staples those picks. He uses them as currency, which is kind of like how like the NBA does it with picks. You know, you just kind of use them as currency. You don't really like. Rarely is a team in the NBA like picking at their slotted pick in like any given like late in the draft. You know, not necessarily a lottery pick. But in any case, he just uses them as. I like the strategy. I think the alpha, like where you gain value in the NFL draft, is probably through trading. That's why nobody really stays where they're picking unless it's the top of the draft. So yeah, fuck it, trade all the picks. I don't care. So
You got to trust Caserio with the team he's built.